I'm Tony Ruiz, contributing editor at Gold Derby, here with Bob Balaban, who plays Professor Elliot Rents on Netflix's The Chair. And Bob, this character, I think in other people's hands or in different with different writing could just simply be seen as a heavy. But I think he's so much more than that. He's more complex than that. How do you see him?
Well, I see the whole series similarly, which is it's not black and white. You could be played black and white, it would be less interesting. This whole thing is written very subtly if you pay attention to it, which it's hard to do when you're watching it. But there are no villains here. There are all people desperate to preserve their way of life. And to me, that's one of the reasons why I think people reacted well to it, was people under great stress with very high stakes at stake. It's harder for the real people that these people are based on, but it's much more interesting to watch that. There's no relaxing in this thing.
One of the things that strikes me is that, again, if you come from the world of academics, or if you've been in the world of academics at all, you've seen these people before. You've seen these types of people. Did you base Elliot on anybody in particular?
I wish I could say I did. I based Elliot on the script. That's kind of corny to say, but we didn't rehearse. We had a couple of read-throughs on Zoom because this was at the height of the pandemic, and we never even got to really meet each other until the first day we were shooting. So the script really told us, I think all of us felt somewhat the same way. It told you everything you needed to know. You didn't have to ask too many questions. And if ever any of us stepped over the line of too angry, too simple, don't put up a brick wall with somebody just because you don't like them, Amanda Peet was always there on set to give, or the director, Daniel Lonergan, was always there to say, remember, these are real people. This isn't a cartoon. I mean, they didn't exactly put it that way. And most of us, in fact, none of us ever were trying to go in that direction. But if we edged that way, we were stopped in a very nice way.
Well, is that one of the rules? Do you think, you're somebody who's done a lot of different types of stuff, but, in comedy especially, most people I've talked to who do comedy say that the key to it is to not play it that way. Do you subscribe to that?
Yes. Yeah. And also I subscribe to reading the script a bunch of times, not just your part, but everybody else's part, and getting a real sort of emotional understanding of what's wanted from the piece. And obviously, one of the biggest things about this thing is everybody is a human being. Everybody has a beating heart, has a problem at home. They're not just teachers, they're people, which is easy to forget sometimes.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is so great about this show is that, again, nobody is the good or the bad guy. They're people that are just, again, like you said, trying to preserve their way of life in a changing world. Do you see kind of parallels between that and the world of, say, like acting and entertainment?
Well, I think it's the world everywhere. How do we diversify intelligently and subtly and meaningfully? It's one of the hardest things, and there are no simple answers to it. It's just, at least we're trying. We may not be doing it in the most wonderful way, but it's hunt and peck all the way, which causes a lot of mini crashes. But I think it's important. I think it has to happen, and it's good the people in this particular series were trying to do it, but you wish they'd been a little smarter about it. But then we all wish we were all a little smarter.
I say that to myself daily. So with Elliot, one of the things that I picked up on him was a real sense of vulnerability that I think humanized him in a way that I think a lesser series would not have. What do you think was kind of the key to that kind of multidimensional aspect of this character?
Well, at some point, Amanda Peet pointed out to me that who I now call my frenemy, Nana Mensah, the person who's been sent to help me, who then ends up sort of destroying my career, she reminded me once or twice that it's exactly what you said, that this is complicated. It's not, she's just trying as hard to get ahead as you are trying to get ahead. And you have to take that into consideration. And she pointed out a couple of times to me, very small moments and scenes where there was a moment to actually enjoy my nemesis. And once you start enjoying your nemesis, it gets complicated, which is good.
How much did you and Nana, because some of my favorite scenes are the scenes where she's kind of teaching the class and Elliot's in the background with kind of these looks. It's the only way I could describe it is a look. How much did you two kind of work together on those moments?
I would say we didn't work at all together on those moments, but I would also say that we both really enjoyed each other. Forgive me, this is a terrible thing. My phone is refusing to respond to the fact that I turned it off.
There. That happens all the time. Don't worry about it.
Okay. And Nana and I really got along and enjoyed each other. So we always knew what was going on in the movie, but we never said, now at this point, I'm going to look here or I'm going to do this. In fact, I was kind of unaware. Now that you mentioned it to me, I don't really remember giving anybody any significant looks, but sometimes acting without words is easier than acting with words.
Well, and that's one of the things I think is so special about the show is that it really is a true ensemble. It's almost like kind of like it feels kind of like a theater ensemble to a certain extent. I think that comes from the fact that so many of you have worked in the theater. What was the ensemble feeling on set like?
Well, it was difficult because remember, this was the height of the epidemic or whatever you want to call it. So we didn't pull each other aside and say, let's rehearse that scene. We pulled each other aside and said, let's go to our dressing room and make sure we never run into each other. So there wasn't any, I would say some of us already knew each other, which is always kind of a helpful, nice thing. And the atmosphere set up by the whole production, and I keep mentioning Amanda, I don't want to say it too much and get sicky sweet or anything like that. But she's very remarkable. She doesn't say very much, but she watches like a hawk. And when she sees something, she can say, here's how to fix it in 2 words. It's really pretty remarkable. So I think we had a nice feeling, especially possibly maybe somewhat because of COVID, because we were all sort of struggling to take your mask off, now act, now put your mask on, now hide, go away. It kind of put us all at the edge of a stress that had nothing to do with being a teacher, but I think it was helpful, and I think we all felt more in the same boat because of that. We couldn't really escape, and we really glommed onto each other in those moments. We were able to actually look at each other and take our masks off.
Holland Taylor told me a story that you and her were staying in the same hotel and it didn't have food, and that you two were wandering the streets of, I think it was Pittsburgh.
Yes. Lovely Pittsburgh in February.
In February, he said that it was so bitterly cold.
Yeah, well, we didn't really know what to do. We were in a hotel where I think Holland and I had placed ourselves on a 10-day sort of quarantine, even though we weren't required to do 10 days. And then it turned out, who were we saving from anything? And it didn't help anything. And the hotel tried to have food, but it didn't really have much of anything to eat because it was very hard. They didn't have employees. Where were they going to get the food from? And we did wander an awful lot and occasionally wandered together, 10 feet apart from each other. I had one especially sort of quietly embarrassing situation involving how to get food. I was expecting something for maybe Amanda or one of the other producers was sending Holland and me something to eat in our rooms, which was like, how did they get it? What happened? It was like contraband. And I got so excited. I was in my bare feet. I had my pajamas on and a t-shirt, and I didn't have a mask on. And I crept out of my front door because I thought I saw the food coming, and the door closed behind me. And I was on the 22nd floor of a hotel without my mask on, no shoes, and a t-shirt. And I'm like, well, what do I do? I can't take an elevator because I'll run into people. And what if I, and don't have my mask on? And I had this existential crisis for about 10 minutes. And at one point, somebody down the hall opened their door and to go away. And I said, hello, could you please tell somebody to come rescue me? I'm locked out of my room. And they said, sure. And they never did anything. And eventually the food that I was hoping was going to come actually did come. And I was able to send a messenger to get me back in. But this has nothing to do with the movie whatsoever. But it's like the things that happen when you're trying to be safe.
No, but I think one of the things that, again, is I do connect it kind of back to the show, because this is a show that does comedy based in reality, that
Yes.
It's not contrived. And I feel like that's something that's increasingly rare on television.
Well, I can say I didn't think the event that I just described was funny, and yet 2 weeks later, it was my favorite anecdote. So I guess there's something in what you're saying.
One of the things about this show is it does talk a lot about, the state of thinking, of academics, of critical thinking. And I just was curious as to how you kind of responded to kind of that undercurrent of the show.
Well, it's happened to all of us who have children who are in school, because when my kids were in school, we used to see what books, what classic things we loved that were being taken away from our children, and they weren't reading them. And instead, they were reading modern literature. And it's like, why can't it be back to the good old days? And it's a fight. We want everything, and you can't get everything. And at some point, it's kind of appropriate to read modern literature because that's where you are right now. Not that everything else in the past has to go away, but we've got to make room for improvement and change.
Your career has been so varied, and one of the things that I love is that variety, switching between writing and directing and things in the theater. What draws you to specific projects?
Trying to get a job, basically. I wish I could say I had one or two things I'm interested in. I need to be interested in something to be doing it. If there are three really interesting things, I'll choose the best one that I think is the most well-written, that I most get excited about. It can be anything. There are no topics that I'm not interested in necessarily, because we all know some of the most boring things, like the history of the telephone book. If it was written properly, it could probably be a terrific TV series or iPad, or it could, who knows what it would be. So I'm on the lookout for things that excite me. And it can be in theater, it can be on TV, it can be a movie. I'm interested in any form of anything. And as they say in our contracts, even things that haven't been invented yet, I'm interested in.
I have to ask about one of my all-time favorite Christopher Guest films, which is A Mighty Wind.
Yes, I love that movie.
It's a film that, and I think this also connects to the idea of, improvisation, which I think sometimes improvisation is used in the absence of good writing, and sometimes sometimes it's perfect, like in that film. Are you equally comfortable in both worlds, in the world of the script and the world of improvisation?
Well, I didn't know I was until Chris asked me to do the first one, Waiting for Guffman. I had actually studied improvisation with in a crowd of 25 people who know about improvisation, Viola Spolin, who had kind of invented improvisation. I'm from Chicago, and I did the teenage workshop with Viola and was forever remembering how great it was, what she taught us, how we did it, how much fun it was. And rarely did I have a chance to use it in anything. I've used it as a director, saying to some cast members, let's do the scene that's not in the play where she tries to kill him. And so we get a little backstory going that way. But when Chris called me and he said, would you be in this thing? It's all improvised, basically. And I said, thank God, finally. It's a little bit scary, but I would say it's definitely more in the, you feel really excited, which is vaguely similar to being scared, but it's not being scared. It's like, look what amazing thing is happening right now. It's great.
Did that sense of improvisation, did that happen on the chair at all? Or did you guys stick to the script?
I would say, I don't remember saying anything in particular that wasn't there. But if something great occurred to me, I'm sure I would have, I did once in a while say something, and once in a while was met with, that was good, because they were very accepting, as long as it was good, of whatever anybody did. But because the script was so carefully toned and shaped, you didn't really want to ruin it. You didn't want to bump into it with your own great idea. But once in a while I had an idea and other people did, and it was perfectly, nobody went, egad, stop, shut us down. We're not saying the words. But we mostly said the words because we wanted to, because we loved them so much. It's rare to get something in any format of anything that's, I don't want to be, again, okay, so I'll compliment everybody. It was well written. It had a quietly combative tone to the whole thing. And it didn't just deal with the obvious things that were happening. It dealt with people's home lives, and people were ultra three-dimensional, which is very hard to do with a cast of 1 million people, and everybody's trying to get a bit of life, their own life into it, their character, and they managed to do it all. So I think you never knew whether you were watching. Well, there were no axes to grind in the script. I think that sort of just occurred to me. Nobody was saying, this is the way to do it, this isn't the way to do it. It was just, this is where you are, be there. And it's exciting. And I think people, you can't do it in everything. And I played a couple of people who were so villainous that from the beginning, I felt like I was twirling my mustache. And it was fun and it worked and it was what the movie needed. But this one certainly didn't need that.
No, it didn't. And Bob, I could talk to you about this show forever because I just.
And I'll keep talking. Believe me.
Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders throughout the season. Bob Balaban from the chair, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good to see you, Tony.